It begins with a soft pull, a quiet thought. Maybe you're sitting alone, the world feels heavy, your thoughts are loud, and you light up. And suddenly something shifts. The noise fades. The air feels thicker, almost mystical. Music sounds deeper. A simple thought becomes profound. You begin to feel like you're connecting with something beyond the ordinary. A presence, a sense of more. You feel spiritual. And this is the trap. Weed feels like it opens doors. It feels like it calms your mind and lifts your spirit into another level. And for a while it does. That's the illusion. Weed gives the impression that it's a key to something greater. And this is why many spiritual seekers believe it helps them evolve. They think it helps them connect with their higher self, their intuition, or even the universe. But what you feel is not real connection. What you feel is a chemical manipulation of your awareness. And it's important to understand the difference, because this is where many people stay stuck for years. True spiritual connection doesn't come from something outside of you. It doesn't come from a plant, a ritual, or a substance. It comes from the slow, uncomfortable, and deeply honest process of waking up. Waking up to who you are, without filters, without masks, without distractions. And weed, no matter how gentle or sacred it seems, is a distraction. Let's break this down. When you smoke, THC interacts with your brain in a very specific way. It alters how your brain processes time, sound, thought, and emotion. That's why your sense of awareness feels different. That's why you suddenly notice things you didn't before. You begin to feel like you're more awake. But you're not. You're just experiencing a distortion of perception, not a deepening of it. It's like putting on colored glasses. Everything looks different, but the world hasn't changed. Only your lens has. Now, imagine trying to build a spiritual life based on that lens. Imagine trying to understand truth while wearing glasses that twist and tint everything you see. That's what many people do when they rely on weed for spiritual insight. They build an inner world on a false ground. A beautiful, dreamy world, but one that isn't solid. This is why so many people feel like they're growing, when in fact, they're going in circles. Weed gives you a taste of what feels like depth, but it's just a shortcut that comes with a cost. And that cost is clarity. Clarity is the foundation of true spirituality. Real awakening requires you to be fully present, fully sober, fully aware of all your thoughts, even the ones you don't want to face. It requires you to sit in discomfort, to look at your fears without flinching, to meet your pain without running. Weed softens that edge. It makes it easier to avoid the hard truths. And that's why it feels spiritual. It lets you feel things without facing them. Now think about that. If something gives you the sensation of spiritual depth, but actually takes you away from the work, is it really helping? Many people say, but I get amazing insights when I'm high. And yes, some ideas that come through may feel profound. But here's the truth most don't want to hear. If your insights only come when you're high, they're not yours. They're borrowed. Real insights come through stillness, through effort, through deep silence, through practice, meditation, breath work, fasting, prayer, nature, and solitude. These are the ancient tools. These are the real portals. They don't give you flashes of truth. They build truth inside you over time. Weed skips the process. And by skipping it, you lose what really matters. You can't fake expansion. You can't cheat your way to wisdom. You can't bypass the steps of spiritual growth and expect to reach a true awakening. That's why the illusion is so dangerous. It makes you believe you're evolving when you're just numbing. It makes you feel connected when you're actually disconnected from your real power. And perhaps the saddest part is this. The more you rely on weed to feel spiritual, the more you disconnect from your natural ability to feel it without it. Your body, your mind, and your spirit are built for divine connection. You were born with this ability. But like any muscle, if you don't use it, it weakens. And weed becomes the crutch. Instead of learning how to quiet your mind through discipline, you use weed. Instead of learning to access peace through breath, you light up. Instead of opening your heart with presence, you open your stash. And the more you do that, the more you lose the real thing. So here's the hard truth. Weed gives you a taste of something that isn't truly yours. And that taste keeps you coming back. But until you let it go, you won't know the full depth of your own being. True awakening is not euphoric. It's raw. It's clear. It's not a high. It's a deep grounding in reality. It's not about escaping your pain. It's about transforming it into light. And you can't do that if you're constantly floating just above your feelings. You have to drop in, fully, sober, awake. Weed might open a door, but it won't help you walk through it. Only your clear, present self can do that. Spiritual growth is not something that happens all at once. It's not a sudden flash of light that transforms everything overnight. It's slow, it's quiet, and most of all, it's earned. It takes daily effort, self-reflection, patience, and discipline. This is where the path begins to narrow. And this is exactly where weed becomes a problem. The first time you turn to weed during a hard moment, it feels harmless. Maybe you had a stressful day. Maybe your emotions were too loud. So you reach for something that softens the edges. Something that makes the pain blur, the mind slow down, the pressure melt. And for a little while, it works. You feel better. But here's where something subtle happens, something most people never notice. That tiny decision becomes a pattern. That pattern becomes a habit. And that habit becomes a dependency. Before long, you're no longer choosing weed, you're needing it. Now, think about that from a spiritual point of view. A path that is supposed to be about mastery, presence, and awareness becomes something you can only walk when you're high. Your growth becomes chained to a substance. And that is where the real damage begins. Spirituality is about turning inward. It's about listening to your soul with no filter. It's about hearing your own fears, doubts, anger, and sadness, and choosing to work with them, not run from them. But when you depend on weed, you start skipping that part. You start reaching for escape instead of understanding. So every time something rises within you, something difficult, painful, uncomfortable, you smoke and push it back down. This doesn't make the emotion disappear. It just hides it. And what is hidden cannot heal. Imagine planting a seed in the ground. That seed needs sunlight, water, space, and care. But what if you poured something over the soil that numbed it? Something that covered the ground so thickly that no light could get in. That's what weed does to your inner growth. It covers the process. It hides the parts that need to breathe. The result? You feel stuck. You feel like you're doing the spiritual work, but deep down, nothing changes. Because instead of healing, you're escaping. It's important to ask yourself this. When life feels heavy, what do? Do you sit with the feeling? Do you ask it what it wants to teach you? Or do you silence it with smoke? Discipline is about choosing the harder path in the moment for a better outcome later. It's choosing to feel discomfort now so you can be free later. Weed trains you to do the opposite. It gives you comfort now and chains you later. This shows up in many small ways. You plan to meditate, but only after you smoke. You say you'll journal, but only once you've gotten into that relaxed state. Slowly, your spiritual life becomes built around your high. Without it, everything feels dull. And this is the trap of dependence. And here's the truth most people avoid. Anything you need in order to feel spiritual is not real spirituality. Because real spirituality starts with nothing. No tools, no substances, no mood music, just you in silence, facing yourself. That's the raw material of transformation. And when you constantly lean on weed, you lose access to it. It's not that weed makes you a bad person. It doesn't. It's not evil. It's not poison. But it is a sedative. It sedates the very parts of you that need your full attention. It quiets the messages from your body, your mind, and your spirit. It takes the sharpness out of your experience. And while that feels good, it also makes you less able to grow. Growth is not about comfort. It's about tension. Like a muscle being pushed in a workout, your spirit grows when it's challenged. And if every challenge is softened by weed, there's no pressure, so there's no progress. Now think about what you could be building instead. Imagine a life where you learn to sit in your sadness and find your strength inside it. Where you feel fear, but walk forward anyway. Where you hear your anger and let it teach you about your boundaries. That kind of growth is only possible when you meet life with full awareness. Dependence steals that from you. And it's not just about emotional growth, it's about energy. Every time you smoke, you shift your vibration. You interrupt the natural communication between your higher self and your human self. Instead of deepening your intuition, you cloud it. Instead of sharpening your awareness, you dull it. This isn't about being perfect. Everyone needs help sometimes. Everyone has moments of escape. But when escape becomes the norm, you are no longer growing. You're repeating the same loop, the same moods, the same lessons, because you're too sedated to fully experience and release them. Spiritual discipline is about choosing presence, even when it hurts. It's about choosing clarity, even when confusion feels safer. It's about choosing truth, even when lies are more comforting. And that kind of discipline creates true transformation. Without it, you just end up decorating the cage you're in. Weed gives you the feeling of peace. But peace that comes from escape is not real peace. Real peace comes from integration. From looking at all the pieces of who you are and learning to love them, heal them, and bring them into harmony. To do that, you need to be fully awake, fully here. Dependence is not always loud. Sometimes it's a soft voice that says, just one more time. You've had a rough day. You deserve this. And maybe you do. But you also deserve something more. A life where you don't need a substance to feel whole. A path where your power comes from inside you, not from smoke. And the moment you begin choosing discipline over dependence, everything changes. Slowly, quietly, but deeply, you start to hear your inner voice again. You begin to rebuild the bridge between your human self and your soul. You stop running and start rising. And that's when the real spiritual awakening begins. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt something was off, even before anyone spoke? Have you ever met someone and knew, without reason, that you could trust or not trust them? That quiet knowing, that's your intuition. And whether you realize it or not, your spiritual awakening depends on your ability to hear that voice clearly. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Weed slowly turns down the volume of that voice. It doesn't happen overnight. That's what makes it dangerous. It's not loud, not violent. It's slow, gentle, but steady, like fog rolling in over a bright city. At first, you can still see the lights. Then, everything becomes dim, then blurred. Then eventually, you don't even realize what you're missing, because your eyes have gotten used to the haze. That's what weed does to your senses. We often think of intuition as something that lives in the mind. But it's not just a thought. It's a full-body experience. Your skin feels it. Your chest tightens. Your stomach shifts. Your energy responds. The more spiritually aware you become, the more sensitive you get to these subtle movements. You begin to sense energies around you. You notice what words carry truth and what words carry masks. You begin to feel the room, the people, the silence between sentences. This sensitivity is sacred. It's the compass that guides you through the invisible parts of life. And it's the very thing weed begins to block. When you smoke, your nervous system shifts. Your brain changes its rhythm. Your senses dull, just a little at first. Food might taste better, music might sound richer, and touch might feel softer, but it's a thicker kind of perception. It's not sharp, not pure, not clean. It's like looking at your inner world through a thick piece of glass. The edges are rounded, the details fade, and your intuition? It begins to whisper. Then it begins to wait, because it needs silence to speak, and your body is no longer silent. Weed puts you into a kind of artificial harmony. You feel relaxed, calm, even inspired. But this relaxed state is not the same as being present. Presence comes from a still mind. Clarity comes from an undisturbed nervous system. True awareness needs an alert body. Weed takes you away from that alertness, and that means it takes you away from your power. When your senses are dulled, you can't fully feel your energy. Energy is everything on the spiritual path. It's not just a concept, it's your real language. You feel energy before words, before logic, before thought. That's why ancient practices like Reiki, Qigong, and Kundalini Yoga are based entirely on learning how to feel and move your energy. And what's the first step in all of them? Becoming sensitive. Weed cuts you off from that sensitivity. You might still think you're tuned in. You might say, I feel more when I smoke. But what you're feeling is not your clean energy. It's a mix of chemical distortion and emotional projection. You might feel more emotions, but that doesn't mean you're actually understanding them. You might feel more thoughts, but that doesn't mean you're hearing your soul. And this is where things get complicated, because weed does something. It doesn't leave you numb like other substances. It still opens certain sensations, but it's like turning on a cheap filter over your third eye. What you see and feel is tinted. It's not your raw perception, it's an altered version of it. In real spiritual awakening, you're learning to move through the world with naked awareness. No filters, no shortcuts, no crutches. That's how you begin to feel truth. Not think it, not imagine it, but know it deep in your body. That's when you become magnetic. That's when you walk into a room and shift the energy without saying a word. That's when you begin to heal yourself and others, because your presence becomes medicine. You can't carry that kind of power if your senses are foggy. Another thing to think about, your body is a tuning fork. It picks up signals all the time, from people, from places, from the earth itself. This is what shamans and energy workers train for years to become aware of. They clean their bodies, quiet their minds, and sharpen their perception until they can feel the invisible. Not guess, not imagine, feel. Now imagine what happens when that tuning fork is constantly coated in smoke. The signals become distorted. You think you're picking up one thing, but you're reading it wrong. You think your intuition is speaking, but it's just noise. And the worst part is, you don't even realize you've lost the signal because you're still feeling something. But that something is no longer trustworthy. This is why many people who smoke regularly get caught in emotional loops. They think they're healing, but really they're reliving the same stories. They think they're growing, but they're just going in circles. Because without sharp perception, you can't track your real progress. The body keeps score. It remembers everything. It's your guide, and it wants to speak to you. But it needs your full attention. It needs clarity. It needs a clean channel. Weed scrambles that channel. And here's the part that's often ignored. This dulling effect doesn't just happen when you're high. If you smoke often, it lingers. It stays in your system. Your energy field adapts to that foggy frequency. You might not feel it, but you're carrying it with you. That haze becomes your new normal. So how can you truly wake up if you're walking through a dream? You don't need to become hypersensitive overnight. You don't need to hear spirits or read auras to be spiritual. But you do need to be clear. You need to be sharp enough to hear your inner voice before the world drowns it out. You need to be still enough to feel energy as it moves through you. And that can only happen when your senses are awake. Not dulled, not filtered, not chemically soothed, just awake. The great spiritual teachers, Buddha, Rumi, Yogananda, Christ, they didn't smoke to reach the divine. They sat in silence. They faced the rawness of being alive. They didn't seek comfort. They sought truth. And that truth came through clarity. You have that same power inside you, that same potential. But it can only be unlocked when you trust yourself enough to feel everything, clearly, completely, and soberly. Because your spirit doesn't speak loudly. It whispers. And to hear it, you must be fully here. Everything in the universe is made of energy. Every thought you think, every word you speak, every emotion you feel, it's all vibration. Your body, your mind, your spirit, they're constantly humming at a certain frequency. And this frequency shapes your reality. When your vibration is high, life flows. You feel clear, open, and connected. You attract people and experiences that match your inner peace. You feel in tune with the world around you, like your spirit is aligned with a deeper rhythm. But when your vibration drops, things feel heavy. You feel confused, disconnected, anxious, or tired. You attract drama. You feel like something is off, but you can't explain what. That's because your frequency, the signal you're sending out, is no longer in harmony with truth. Now here's what most people don't realize. Weed affects your vibration. Not just while you're high, not just in the moment. It shifts your entire energetic state, and not in a good way. At first, it might feel like your vibration is rising. You feel more relaxed, more in tune, more sensitive to music, to nature, to your own thoughts. But that's not the same as actually raising your frequency. That's just feeling different because your brain chemistry is altered. True high vibration comes from within, not from outside stimulation. Let's break this down in simple terms. Imagine your soul as a radio station that's always broadcasting a signal. That signal can be clear and strong, or it can be weak and scrambled. Your goal on the spiritual path is to strengthen that signal, to become more and more aligned with love, truth, wisdom, and presence. You do this through healing, meditation, right action, breath, intention, and stillness. But every time you smoke weed, you cloud that signal. It's like throwing static over the radio. Your body might still be sending energy out, but it's mixed with distortion. The vibration becomes murky. Not because you're a bad person, not because weed is evil, but because it interferes with your natural energy system. Your chakra system, the spiritual energy centers within you, is designed to help you move energy up and down your body. From the base of your spine to the crown of your head, energy wants to rise. This is called the Kundalini flow in yogic traditions. When it flows freely, you feel alive. You feel lit from within. You feel clear. But weed slows this flow down. It creates a kind of energetic bottleneck, especially around the heart and third eye, two of the most important chakras for spiritual awakening. The heart chakra is where compassion and forgiveness live. The third eye is where your inner vision, clarity, and intuition live. and both of these are sensitive to vibration. Weed numbs the heart and clouds the third eye. That's why people often say they feel disconnected when they stop smoking. What they're actually feeling is the absence of artificial stimulation. Their vibration has been so dependent on the external shift that when it's gone, they don't know how to feel naturally high. And this is the trap. Weed gives you a shortcut, a doorway into a slightly elevated state. But it's not a true high frequency, it's a temporary one. And the cost of that shortcut is your long-term energy flow. Let's compare this to something more physical. Imagine two people trying to reach the top of a mountain. One trains daily, climbs slowly, builds strength, breathes deeply, and adjusts to the altitude step by step. The other takes a helicopter to the top, who will truly know the mountain, who will understand the air, the terrain, the path. The one who climbed. Spiritual awakening is the same. It's not about reaching a certain state. It's about becoming someone who can hold that state with strength and clarity. And weed doesn't train you for that. It drops you into a feeling that you didn't earn. And because you didn't build the strength to get there, you can't stay there. That's why many people feel spiritual highs when they smoke, but crash afterward. You might feel loving, clear, and open one moment, and then anxious, scattered, or tired the next. That's not your natural energy fluctuating. That's the drug wearing off. And every time that happens, your energy system gets confused. It no longer knows how to regulate itself without outside help. This confusion affects your spiritual path deeply. High vibration comes from alignment, and alignment comes from honesty, effort, clarity, and embodiment. You can't fake it. You can't buy it. You can't smoke your way into it. You have to become it. And becoming it requires staying grounded. Weed often pulls you out of your body. It puts you in your head or your emotional space, but it disconnects you from the earth, from your breath, from your feet on the ground. And yet, all true spiritual power begins in the body. You can't rise up until you're rooted down. That's why monks, yogis, and shamans spend years cleansing their body and mind, because they know that your vessel has to be clean to hold high frequencies. It's like trying to pour crystal clear water into a cup full of smoke. No matter how pure the water is, it gets tainted. You might wonder, but don't some spiritual traditions use plants? Yes, it's true that certain cultures use sacred plant medicines like ayahuasca or peyote. But those are done in controlled ceremonies, with intention, preparation, guidance, and deep integration. They are not used casually. They are not used to escape. And even those paths are not for everyone. Weed, on the other hand, is usually used for comfort, for boredom, for softening pain, for checking out. And that's where it becomes a vibration trap. Because whatever you do repeatedly becomes your frequency. If you meditate daily, you build a calm, focused frequency. If you pray with sincerity, you build a grateful, heart-centered frequency. If you face your fears, you build a courageous, stable frequency. But if you smoke daily, you build a lazy, foggy, dependent frequency. No matter how spiritual your intentions are, you might still speak the right words. You might still read the right books. But energy doesn't lie. Your frequency tells the truth of who you are. Not who you want to be. Not who you pretend to be. But who you are right now. And if weed is a constant part of your life, that frequency is affected. This doesn't mean you're not spiritual. You are, but you're running with weights on your ankles. And the moment you begin to let go of the habit, the moment you choose clarity over comfort, you will feel your vibration rise naturally. Not in a dramatic way, but in a steady, glowing, empowering way. You'll feel lighter, more focused, more connected. You'll hear your inner voice more clearly. You'll move with more confidence. You'll begin to attract better things. Not because you're trying to, but because you've become a match for them. Because your vibration is your magnet. And that magnet works best when it's clear, clean, and rooted in truth. There comes a point on the spiritual path where the light alone is not enough. You begin to realize that true awakening doesn't just come from peace, love, or bliss. It also comes from facing what you've avoided your whole life. The fear, the sadness, the anger, the deep, hidden wounds. This journey into your darker layers is called shadow work, and it is one of the most powerful and painful parts of true healing. But there's a problem. Most people don't want to go there. And that's exactly where weed slips in. Weed doesn't just soften your body or calm your thoughts. It creates a soft blanket over your shadow. It makes you feel like everything is okay, even when it's not. And for a while, that's comforting. It gives you space. It helps you breathe. It helps you survive a hard moment. But over time, it becomes more than comfort. It becomes avoidance. Instead of facing your pain, you smoke. Instead of crying when the emotion rises, you light up and push it back down. Instead of asking what the anger means, you mute it. Instead of feeling the ache of loneliness, you distract yourself with a high. And you tell yourself you're okay. You tell yourself that you're relaxed or going with the flow or not attached. But what you're actually doing is avoiding your shadow. And the shadow doesn't go away when ignored. It just waits. Spiritual growth demands honesty. And the most honest moments in your life are usually the most uncomfortable ones. The moments when the mask slips, when your ego cracks, when your past shows up at your front door in the form of pain, triggers, or emotional chaos. Those moments are your greatest teachers. And if you always run to weed when they arrive, you miss the lesson. Again and again, weed doesn't remove your trauma. It delays it. It puts a pause on your healing journey and gives you the illusion of peace. You're no longer growing, you're looping. You're experiencing the same emotions, but without depth. You're living in a cycle of temporary calm, followed by suppressed emotion. Let's say something from your past is still unhealed, maybe a broken relationship, a childhood wound, or a betrayal. That energy is still inside you, stored in your body, affecting your choices. If you face it, feel it, and move through it, you grow. But if you avoid it, even by just chilling out, it stays. This is the real danger of using weed on the spiritual path. It gives you the feeling of healing without doing the work. It's the same reason people avoid meditation when they're upset. It's easier to get high. It's easier to drift, to float away from the uncomfortable truth. But real healing requires that you stay, that you sit, that you feel it fully, even if it burns. And yes, it will burn. Yes, it will break you open. But it's through that break that the light gets in. Many people believe they've done their healing just because they don't feel bad anymore. But numbness is not healing. Detachment is not healing. Distraction is not healing. Healing is feeling. It's allowing the full storm of your emotions to move through your system, without escape, without sedation, without buffering. And when you do that, something incredible happens. The emotion releases. It doesn't stay stuck. It doesn't return. It transforms. Because energy can't be destroyed, but it can be alchemized. You can turn pain into power. You can turn fear into wisdom, but only if you face it. Now, this doesn't mean you have to dive into your pain all at once. Shadow work is delicate. It's sacred. And sometimes, in rare moments, a little help from outside can give you the space to process. But when that help becomes your habit, you lose the opportunity to build the strength you were meant to have. Weed doesn't give you peace. It gives you pause. And many confuse the two. They think they're becoming more spiritual because they're not reacting. But numbing your reactions is not the same as mastering them. Mastery comes from awareness, from presence, from choosing your response with a clear mind, not from blunting your emotions until you don't feel them anymore. And here's the deeper layer. When you use weed to bypass your pain, you're also bypassing your purpose. Your wounds are not here to punish you. They are here to guide you. Every scar holds a message. Every trigger is a doorway. Every breakdown can become a breakthrough, but only if you're willing to listen. When you choose to feel instead of escape, something sacred begins to happen. You begin to trust yourself. You realize that you are strong enough to hold your emotions. You become emotionally mature, spiritually stable, energetically grounded. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to run. The kind of person who can sit with sadness and still find beauty. Who can sit with fear and still feel safe. Who can sit with pain and still choose love. And that person, that version of you, they don't need a substance to feel connected. They are the connection. They become a bridge between the human and the divine, between light and dark, between shadow and soul. Weed interrupts that process. It keeps you in a dream where everything feels okay, but nothing is really changing. And one day you wake up and realize you're still carrying the same wounds, the same patterns, the same pain, just with a smile over it. That's not awakening. That's avoidance. True awakening is not about feeling good. It's about becoming whole. And you can't be whole if you're cutting off the parts of yourself that hurt. You must bring them in. Feel them. Forgive them. Integrate them. And that journey requires full awareness. Not fog. Not escape. Not numbness. It requires you to walk into the fire of your own being and trust that you will come out cleaner, stronger, clearer, and more connected than ever before. The shadow is not your enemy. It's your doorway, but only if you're willing to stop running and step through it, fully awake. There is a moment that comes to everyone walking the spiritual path. A quiet moment. No voices, no lights, no highs, no breakthroughs. Just a choice. A simple, honest decision. To stop chasing states. To stop numbing pain. To stop reaching for something to make the moment feel better. And to simply be, with yourself as you are, no escape. This is the moment clarity begins. And clarity, once tasted, changes everything. Letting go of weed is not just about removing a substance from your life. It's about removing a layer of fog that has been hiding your true self. It's about giving your mind space to breathe, your emotions permission to rise, and your soul the silence it needs to speak. At first, the world feels sharper, more intense, maybe even uncomfortable. Feelings you've been numbing might return. Old thoughts, old memories, old pain might rise again. This is not a setback. It's a sign that your system is coming back online. You're waking up. And waking up isn't always pretty. It's raw. It's real. But it's also incredibly powerful. Because when you start to live without filters, you realize something surprising. You don't need them. You don't need a substance to feel joy. You don't need a cloud to feel connected. You don't need a high to feel alive. Those things were always inside you. You just couldn't feel them through the fog. Real spiritual power doesn't come from feeling good all the time. It comes from feeling everything and still choosing to stay grounded, peaceful, and aware. It comes from clarity. Clarity is not just the absence of confusion. It is the presence of full awareness. It is seeing life, not as you want it to be, but as it truly is. It's seeing yourself with all your wounds and your wisdom, your pain and your purpose, and knowing that you are whole. This kind of clarity is a gift, but it's also a discipline. It takes effort to live with open eyes in a world that teaches you to close them. It takes courage to feel deeply in a society that encourages distraction. And it takes faith to trust that your natural state, sober, clear, fully present, is enough. But once you begin to live this way, the rewards are endless. Your intuition sharpens. You begin to hear the soft nudges of your inner voice, guiding you toward truth. You start noticing signs, patterns, synchronicities, not because you're imagining them, but because you're finally aware enough to see them. You start making choices that align with your soul, not your comfort. Your relationships deepen. You listen more. You speak with intention. You feel others, not just with your mind, but with your whole being. You stop attracting chaos and start calling in clarity. You don't need to protect your energy anymore, because your energy becomes so strong, so clean, that low vibrations simply fall away. Your purpose becomes clear. You stop wondering what you're here to do. You just know, because your inner compass works again, because you've cleared the static, and now the signal is pure. You move with confidence. You act with love. You walk with a quiet, grounded power that doesn't need to prove anything. This is what happens when you choose clarity over comfort. But clarity is not just a state. It's a lifestyle. It means waking up with a clear mind. It means creating space in your day to breathe, to reflect, to be still. It means nourishing your body with clean food, movement, and rest. It means listening to your emotions instead of running from them. It means facing your past and forgiving yourself fully. It means choosing practices that build you, not just soothe you. Clarity means showing up for yourself, even when it's hard. And it also means trusting that your natural self is enough. That you, without anything added, are already divine. You don't need to alter your state to touch the sacred. You are the sacred. This is where many people go wrong. They believe spirituality is about reaching some mystical height, some state of eternal bliss. But awakening is not about escaping the human experience. It's about embracing it fully. It's about bringing heaven down into earth, not floating away from reality. And when you live with clean clarity, something magical happens. You stop chasing spirituality, and you start embodying it. It's no longer something you do. It's something you are. You become the calm in the storm, the truth in the confusion, the light in the dark. Not because you're pretending, not because you're high, but because you've done the work. You've stayed with yourself. You've cleaned your channel. You've made space for your real self to emerge. And that self, that sober, sensitive, spiritually grounded self, that's the one who can truly awaken. Weed might give you moments of inspiration, but clarity gives you transformation. Weed might offer temporary peace, but clarity builds lasting strength. Weed might feel like connection, but clarity is connection. Because the path of awakening is not upward, it's inward. And the more clearly you can see inside yourself, the more clearly you will see the truth in everything. So if you've been using weed as a spiritual tool, this isn't a judgment. This is an invitation to remember that you don't need it, to remember that your spirit was never dependent on a substance, to remember that your clearest, brightest, most awakened self is waiting for you beneath the fog. You don't have to chase a high. You just have to return to you. And when you do, when you choose clarity over clouds, you'll see it for yourself. You were never missing anything. You were just hiding it under smoke. Now, it's time to clear the air.